So it's springtime, and are you starting to have some anxiety and worry about what next year's going to bring and how you're going to transition to that fall? Is it going to be a new grade for your child? Is it going to be a new school for your child? Well, you are in the perfect place because today we have a wonderful guest with us who is going to be exploring the topic of transitions with us. I'm Charmaine Tanner. I'm passionate about helping parents become more effective advocates for their children. That's why I do this weekly Facebook Live show for you. I'm a retired teacher, a parent, and also a full-time advocate for parents like you. So today we welcome Kiki McGough back. She was with us a few months ago when she was talking about positive behavior strategies. She is with us live today, and we're going to kind of continue with that theme of the importance of our children's behavior, having people understand that they can be accepted and also included successfully in general ed classrooms. Kiki has some specific tips for you. I also wanted to share that I have this ebook that I wrote about secrets for special ed transitions, and it is all the way from preschool to transitioning out of high school. And the one thing I think that makes this ebook unique is that I have tips for parents, tips for your child because they need to be bought in to this transition process, and also tips for your children's teachers. So if you'd like to get a free copy, just type the word book into the comments and you will get a response from my IEP bot and she will give you the link to the book. But let's go with Kiki and do an introduction. I have had the pleasure of knowing Kiki for a while. She is in Colorado. She has been a teacher, a special ed coordinator. She's taught university classes. She now is a consultant, and also she can add lobbyist to her resume because she was recently in Washington, D.C., meeting with senators and representatives talking about the importance of early childhood education. So Kiki, I'm so thrilled that you could be with us today. And if you want to share a little bit, and I was going to also say, Kiki is a parent and a grandparent. And if you have grandkids, they are our best teachers, right? We learn a lot when we are reparenting our grandkids. But I want to welcome you, Kiki, and go ahead and start us out for the day.
Okay, it's very nice to be here. Thank you. I'm happy to be in Colorado because I was stranded for one night in the airport in Charlotte with all of the weather on the East Coast. So I'm very, very happy to be home. I was a little concerned about that. So, as Charmaine said, I retired last June. I've done special education for 43 years, and we share the common goal of really helping families to understand and be able to advocate and support their children because they're going to be with them from birth throughout their educational career. So I can have an impact on staff when they're teaching kids, but I can have a greater impact if I can really support families to know what to do to support advocacy for their kids. And this, again, is looking at transitioning them. And it's really challenging for families who have developed a lot of trust and a nurturing relationship with the team to know that they are losing that team and going forth into a new school with a new team. So one of my jobs at Head Start, I just retired from Head Start as the Disabilities and Mental Health Coordinator. And over a 5-year period, every year I transitioned 18 to 20 children with pretty significant behavior and mental health challenges into the public school system. So a lot of my work was really helping school district folks in kindergarten be prepared for those kids and helping parents to know what to do if things did not go according to the beautiful plan that we had developed. So I'm going to go ahead and share the PowerPoint. It's a little funky. Let me get in here.
Yes. And I'm going to tell our viewers, welcome Um, and type in the comments any questions you have. And at the end of Kiki's PowerPoint, we'll come back and do some live Q&A time.
Okie doke. So, successful transitions over the grades. I want to create a plan that we can continue in the next level and not have to start over from scratch. So as Charmaine said, parents in April, spring break's coming up for a lot of schools this week. They start getting very, very nervous about it. They know the team they're working with's got great communication. They can sail through this year, but what is going to happen next year? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that I've done in supporting transition from preschool into public school. I've got some examples of different kiddos that have different levels of need and how we transition them across grade levels, and then some tips for transition for the older kids as well, and then we'll come back for questions. So I really have worked with all grade levels and all range of services, from early intervention, birth to 5, to therapeutic treatment, to public school as an administrator, residential for adults, and have worked with a range of needs of kids within the public school system. I have 3 grown children. They're kind of wild children. All 3 of them have ADHD. And I have to tell you, on a year-to-year basis, I had to really use my own advocacy skills because I had to make sure that they were a good match for the teachers who were getting them. My daughter was great. She had an IEP and special ed services in preschool. By the time she went into public school, she did have ADHD and sensory motor integration and visual problems and word retrieval problems, and had an IEP for speech. But man, by the time she went to middle school, she says, "Mom, don't worry about it. I know how to ask for help with my notes. If I can't write fast enough, I can get one of my friends to take notes." And she sailed through advocating. Now she's a special ed teacher with her master's in special education, and probably a far better instructional teacher than I have ever been. My son Patrick is 30, just went out to see him at the end of January in San Francisco. He's a modern dancer, an incredibly talented modern dancer, but he was the child who moved and shake and tapped and really never sat still. So I had to make sure that we had teachers that were accommodating to his physical movement needs. And the kindergarten teacher that I carefully selected in the district where I was teaching sent me a note one day, and she said, "Some of us sit with our feet on the floor and we learn. And others of us roll under the piano bench and we create a new world. Your son is a creator." But I really got it when my youngest was born. Donovan is 26, his birthday's next week, and he's currently working as an infant toddler teacher at Head Start, although his degree is in fine arts sculpture. And when he was 4 years old, he came home and he told me, "Mom, I've given it a lot of thought." And I thought, oh, we're in trouble now. He said, "I never much liked preschool." I told the teachers in preschool, do not fuss with him. He's sitting in his cubby. He's only here 2 days a week for 2 hours. When he's ready to come out of the cubby, he'll come out. Don't push him or he'll never come out. He said, "Never much like preschool. I don't think I'll like kindergarten. I don't know how to read yet. They might not have good math manipulatives. Show and tell may not be very exciting. I think we should quit while we're ahead, and I am done with school." So imagine my surprise and thrill when he graduated, not only from high school, but when he got his fine arts degree from Cornell College in Iowa with his degree in sculpture. When he was in 2nd grade, he came home and said to me, "Mom, what is 80% of 24? And I thought, my son's solving X in an algebraic equation. This is great. And then I said, "Why do you want to know?" And he goes, "Mother, just tell me." I said, "I'll tell you, but I want to know why." And he goes, "Fine. If I know what 80% of 24 is, I will know 80% is meet standards. Then I will know how many math problems I have to do, and I can skip the hard ones." And I thought, if you're in 2nd grade solving for X in an algebraic equation, you probably need to do the 20% of the hard ones and skip the 80%. But he was always looking for the easiest way to do it and the out if he needed to. So when he graduated from high school, they were down at Temple Buell in Denver, beautiful ceremony, and the principal gave each child a rose along with their high school graduation and said, "Give this rose to the person who helped you be on this stage today." My daughter turns to me and says, "It better be you for helping him." And I said, "No, it should be his counselor, because he was on a 504 plan for anxiety and attention deficit disorder. And she used to check in with him weekly on a 504 plan, weekly during art class, because it was his favorite class, and just to see how he was doing and what she could do to support him." So I said, "No, it needs to go to Holly Miner. Holly's the one who got him here by making sure that she matched him up with teachers who he could relate to." He did not want to take AP Calculus as a high school senior, even though he would get college credit for it. Instead, he took probability and statistics, a college level class, but for his free period, he chose to be the student assistant in the AP Calculus class, and he graded all the homework. He just didn't want to have to do the homework. So he learned the content by grading it, and one of his letter of recommendations to get him into college was from the math teacher, who he reminded him of when he was younger. So I did a lot of advocacy to make sure these 3 kids got what they needed. Because we were quite the outside-the-box family. We were kind of a tie-dye family, not the kind of family you would want to sit next to in the restaurant, because we were probably moving quite a bit and talking quite a bit. When Donovan came home from college his sophomore year, he told me that he made me a Mother's Day present. I was thrilled. I asked to see it, but it was in a box with his dirty laundry. When we got home, it is the tie-dye bust that he made of me with his goatee and his long hair in my favorite tie-dye colors as a thank you for helping him through all his years in school. The middle picture is his hair before he went to Burning Man. He made sure that it matched the tie-dye colors he was wearing. And then, of course, as Charmaine said a couple years ago, everybody else had grandchildren and I was still waiting. So my daughter blessed me with a lovely young granddaughter. My real name is Mary Catherine McGough. My daughter is Mary Catherine. My granddaughter is Mary Catherine the 7th, first daughter of the first daughter for 7 generations. And believe me, when she starts kindergarten, we're going to have to start looking now, because she is definitely a mover and shaker and has her own view of how things should be. So we'll have to get those advocacy skills for the next generation. When I worked at Head Start, it was really important. I'm just going to do this for a couple minutes to make sure that my kids had the foundation for what they needed going into public school. In all the years that I was there, 5 years, maybe 100 kids I transitioned, never once did I have a kindergarten teacher call me and say, "Maria doesn't know her colors and letters. Mia can't really decode a 3-letter word." What they called me about were social emotional skills. And those are really the foundation for learning for our kids going into public school for the first time. And what we know, and I use in all of the work that I do, is really looking at nurturing and responsive relationships. Those are the foundation of human life. So human relationships and the effectives of relationships on relationships are the building blocks of healthy development. I wanted my kiddos to have those relationships they needed. I wanted to have them with the teaching staff, and I needed to have those with the families, so the families could take those skills that I knew they had and develop relationships with their new staff. The single best predictor of adult social adaptation is not school grades or classroom behavior, but how well a child gets along with another. So it's critical for me to help those little guys get what they need, so when they go into a class with twice as many kids and 1 teacher instead of 3, that they have the skills they need to be successful. Because kids who have that strong foundation in social, emotional, and emotional literacy are going to be much more successful in school. They're going to be less frustrated, get into fewer fights, have more friends, less impulsive, and that's really going to help them achieve greater academic achievement. So we really want these kiddos moving on to be confident and competent, to have relationships with adults and with peers, be able to persist at tasks. That is so hard. And for some of our brightest kids, when they fall apart in school, it's because everything has come so easily and they never learned how to persist when things got challenging. So they tend to give up a little bit easier than kids who have had to work at it. Follow directions, understand feelings, be able to manage their emotions and empathize with their peers. So this is kind of the foundation to be successful, period. So what we can do with families and children to really develop these relationships early on is going to be critical for those kids to be successful when they move into the public school system. We also know that challenging behavior can impact the family's routine and their ability to participate in family and community activities. And as they look at leaving us in early childhood program and moving into kindergarten, they may not have a good grasp on developing those relationships with the school, on entering into community relationships with new organizations. And what we can do as a part of the transition plan is make sure that we're addressing the family needs as well. We can also make sure that kiddos arrive at school in much better shape if we work with the family. Every behavior plan I do, I have a family component to it, so the family can be working on the same skills that we're working on at school, and that helps the child develop those and generalize them across settings. So when I look at transition, kiddos are engaged in multiple transitions throughout the day. It's not just school to school. And how transitions are scheduled and implemented are going to have a huge impact on children's behavior. When we transition kiddos from early childhood into public school, we know that it's going to be somewhat of a challenge for the children as well as their families. I've successfully used social stories, and I'll show a few examples, to really support this process and to create a more successful transition. When I did the research on transition from early childhood into kindergarten, I was shocked that it's not just parents with special education needs that are anxious about kindergarten, generally across the board for families. So many parents are worried about their child entering elementary school, and they may have had really negative school experiences. And if you have families that have grown up with challenging relationships for themselves in school, to walk into that public school kind of brings to the forefront their own feelings of incompetence, of failure, of having poor relationships. I've had families that have gone into schools where they themselves were in school and didn't do so successfully. So the more that we can support the family to empower them to act as advocates, the more successful their kids are going to be. So entering kindergarten can be a joyful experience. Kids are all excited, I'm going to school, but it's an anxious time for families. 53% of the parents were positive, but 35% of going into kindergarten parents were very anxious about it. They were worried about behavior and emotional challenges. What if they won't go to school? Family adjustment problems. What if the teacher's asking them to do things that they're not developmentally ready for yet? Children with parents of kiddos with more significant difficulties were concerned about what's it going to look like? How are they going to get there? When are they going to get there? Somebody really going to get them off the bus? Where are they going to get their services? Who are these people that are going to be part of their life on a daily basis? And there's a grief process there because they are losing that strong social support system that they developed over several years in a preschool program. Parents of children with disabilities want to feel well connected to the school community, and this is really what a successful transition can do. And anything I say about moving from preschool into kindergarten is also very applicable as you go from elementary to middle to high school, but I'll touch on those a little bit more specifically. So what I did for all of my kiddos is I actually created a pretty comprehensive planning process for them. I also used it for my littlest kids when they went from the infant program to the toddler program, from the toddler program to the preschool program. And I had done a Meet My Child before, and I think I shared that when I did the behavior one, but I tweaked it to come up with a Meet My Child to introduce that child into a new school. And I really looked at what are the child's interests and strengths, what are some things that they're working on, what are some things that they still need to work on, and most importantly, how is the best way to engage that family in a new school? And I had the parents identify for me, and they were very cute because they'd say, well, I would like to do this, but I don't really know if I should say anything about it. And I said, well, what if we write it in as part of the transition plan, that it's better for you if they text you before they call to help prepare you that there might be a problem. They said, yeah, that really helps. That gives me a chance to kind of get calm before I have to talk to them. Is it okay if we write that down? I said, it is absolutely okay. I made sure that their IEP and their behavior plans were updated. And then I got a 2-pocket folder, heavy, heavy plastic. Hopefully it will last for years and years. If nothing else, it's neon pink or neon purple or neon green, and it's easily identifiable with all the other things that families have. Just remember to get that neon green folder and take it to school. On one side, I labeled boldly family. On the other side, I boldly labeled school. And they had complete sets of records on both sides. So all the family had to do, I might transition them to Centennial Elementary, then they move over the summer and they pop up in another school district. We've done no transition for that new school district, but they still have everything in that folder. They walk in and they hand the whole right section of the folder to the school and said, with my business card attached, please call Kiki if you have any questions. So it had 2 sets of records. It had the Meet My Child. I also, for the family on their side, gave them all the local resources for children with special educations, and I gave them contact. I stapled a business card with contact information in the folder so they had it. Whenever possible, I would schedule pre-meetings or visits to the school where we knew the children were going to be going. We would take photographs of the school location, the classroom, the library, the playground, the lunchroom. Now, sometimes parents didn't know until the very end what school their kiddos were going to. I was fortunate because our programs ran all summer, so I could still go into the school and get the photographs, even if I didn't have pictures of the child with the photographs, and put them into my books. But if I could get the kiddo there, I could have the child in the new lunchroom, the child and the new playground. I would get photographs of the school staff, the principal, the kindergarten teacher, special education staff, the office staff, and I included all of these in the social story books that I wrote. If they had positive behavior support expectations, I took pictures of the posters in the hallway and things. If they had classroom self-regulation tools or cozy corners in the classroom, these are the tools the kiddos are going to be using. I incorporated those in the book and wrote about, in your new school, you can. And then I wrote them up as individualized scripted stories to support the transition process. I also wanted to make sure that the plans that I wrote were applicable to move up to the next level and not be very specific and only be able to be implemented in the setting where they were. I wanted new kindergarten teachers and new special ed teams to know what are the situations or characteristics that are going to set up a problem for this child. What are the things that happen before this child gets set off? What is the specific problem behavior we're worried about? And how can we respond to increase the problem versus how can we respond to help that child calm down as quickly as we can? I did get several calls from kindergarten teachers saying, this is not going so well. And I said, did you look at the book? Did you look at the strategies? No, but that might help, wouldn't it? Or I sent little power cards that I'll show you, little princess cards, when we met with the school in the spring. And then the teacher called me in the fall and said, I didn't think I was really going to need those cards, but do you have another set of them? Because I see now why you use them. So I always made sure that the teachers knew who I was and they could contact me as well. I wanted teachers to really understand strategies that would minimize the impact of setting events. You know, this is a child whose dad is in prison. This is a child who goes back and forth from mom's house. It's going to be really helpful for you to know what their schedule is, who they're staying with at night. This is the child that's worried about food at home. You know, we had a little snack drawer, and they never really needed to eat the snacks. They just needed to know that the snacks were in the drawer in case they got hungry. This is a child that we sent home a backpack of food through the backpack program on Friday to make sure that they had what they needed over the weekend. These are the strategies that we used to minimize the impact, giving them a choice, using little cue cards, identifying new skills or replacement behaviors that they need to teach, identify the consequences or reinforcement strategies that work for this child. Please don't start over. It took us 2 years to figure out what makes this kiddo tick. Please read what we gave you. Talk to us, talk to the family, because we know the things that actually work for this child. And then I did my Meet the Child profile. Now, I did all of this for a little girl who moved on to Head Start. She didn't even have serious behavior problems, but she did have a very significant cognitive processing disorder. She would get into the bathroom, and for the life of her, she couldn't remember what she was doing in the bathroom. Was she supposed to go potty, or was she supposed to be washing her hands? So she needed clear, concrete steps. She wasn't good with global directions. And what to us looked like, I'm lost and I don't know what to do. When she went into kindergarten, unfortunately, the kindergarten teacher, in spite of all of our work, perceived it as non-compliance. And this mom called me about 2 or 3 weeks into the school year in tears and said, Kiki, I don't know what to do. I have a meeting set up tomorrow. Is there any way that you can come? You know, my little girl has been sent home twice already. She's in tears. She doesn't want to go back to school. And I'm thinking, boy, of all the kids, this is not the one I expected to rise to the top as one of my biggest challenges. So mom must have really expressed herself well, because when I went in, we had the special ed coordinator, we had the special ed teacher, we had the principal, we had the classroom teacher, and we had the social worker. And I thought, well, good, Mom, you got everybody in the right place at the right time. And what had happened that really triggered this is that when this mom picked this little girl up at school, outside the kindergarten class, with 26 other families picking their kids up, she pointed a finger at this little girl and said, you need to talk to her because she is not listening, she's not doing her work, and I will not have her being defiant in my classroom. And this mother was hurt and she was mortified that her child was ostracized in front of this group. Not okay. So as we're talking, the things came up. She was leaving her desk and going into the bathroom because she was so overloaded with verbal directions that it was the only quiet place that she could find. The teacher was giving 3-4 directions at a time. She couldn't process or understand it. So they had this little color system. So the teacher said, you know, you need to do this or you're going to move your card down to red. And the little girl got up and put her card on red. So the teacher said she knew she was wrong. She moved her card to red. I wanted to say, oh, red's her favorite color. I mean, she moved her card to red because she likes red more than green. She has no clue what your behavior system is. So within 40 minutes, we had gone through the Meet My Child, the transition plan. We had given them some of the visuals that we had used. And on the way out, the mom told me, thank you, you saved my life. I said, no, I hardly spoke. You went in there and you pulled that team together, and they're now doing what we outlined in the fall. Good for you for taking the forefront on this for your little girl. And she said, maybe it will save another child from this happening to, because now the team knows that she wasn't just being defiant. So, you know, it was kind of a backward way to approach it. But had mom not had the phone number, I think the outline or the outcome for this little girl would not have looked as good. So again, what is this kid? What are their favorites? And I'll show you my little girl who only liked Disney princesses. I'm not bought into Disney princesses particularly. My granddaughter is, but this is what really triggered this little girl for positives. So this little girl, Lana, I mean, I had to write a plan for her. I had to really understand what she needed. Again, a processing problem. But what we knew is she liked music, she liked to help, and she was using singing more than words. So how can I take that and use that? She had lots of sensory issues. If she needed to get somewhere, she wasn't too concerned with people getting in her way. She just kind of walked over them. So when I wrote a plan for her, I needed to break it into steps. The 2 times that she got most upset in the classroom were getting her coat on and off and going potty. And the reason was her brain was 4 steps ahead of where she wanted to be. The coat did not come off because she didn't have good sequential planning. She couldn't get the pants up fast enough, so she's running through the room and falling because they're not really pulled up. And what she really needed was to slow her brain down and think about 4-step process to get things done. So what we did is I wrote a plan. The teacher thought I was nuts because I had just started. And she looked at me and I said, what's your favorite song? She's like, why are we singing the song? But the reality is that if we could take getting the coat on and off and pulling the pants up and down into 4 steps, then we could come up with a plan that she could do visuals for, that she could break step by step in model and that we could put into a song format. So when I dropped the plan off after it was all typed up, somebody goes, well, I can take it over for you. And I said, no, 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 I'm going to do this one because it went along with Row, Row, Row Your Boat, which is the song that we made up for this little girl. And I delivered the plan by singing, try, try, try this plan, try it every day. Visual, musical, practical, logical, hope it makes your day. And those are the 4 strategies that child needed for everything to be broken into. She had to see it, she had to music it, it had to make sense and be meaningful to her, and we had to have a 4-step logical progression. Once they did it, she was fine. They did think I was a little out there. What
I think we should be able to commission you to write other songs because I know I have a hard time with that, but it makes a huge difference for those
makes a
kids
huge difference.
Yeah.
So when I first was called into Head Start, I had one of the most challenging kiddos I had. I was asked to go and develop a behavior plan for her, and I spent some time watching because this little gal was headed into kindergarten. And when I saw the classroom, you know, I have to do my positive behavior support foundation. There were things in the classroom that were not ideal. So I said, I'll make you a deal. You do 3 things for me, and I'll work with your little girl. So I said, first of all, you guys need to be recognizing positive behaviors and steps in the right direction. So I want to see 5 times more positives than I do challenging behavior comments. Secondly, you guys, I can't teach this little girl to talk about how she's feeling if I'm not even hearing staff modeling and teaching feelings words. You guys got to do that for me. And let me tell you, yeah, she doesn't stand in line. In fact, she doesn't have to stand in line because when she approaches the line, it's like the waters part. Everybody moves out of the way to see where she wants to stand because it is much better than being punched. So they just let her go wherever she wants. First of all, it's not teaching her how to stand in line, but I would be in trouble in that line because they're standing too long in line. So if you can change your routines in the classroom, then I'll make a behavior plan for you. So when I do a behavior plan, as I said, you know, I incorporate all of the best practices, but the main thing that I do is I make sure there's a parent role here. So this is a mom, and her job was to let the staff know if there were any concerns when she dropped her off. She was going to use my little power cards I'll show you at home. She was going to talk to her about her feelings, put a feeling schedule on the board. She was going to sequence, here's what we're going to do. Like she had to ride the bus a lot, so she'd have a little bag ready of things to do. So let's, you know, prevent some of the challenging behaviors. She got the therapist she was working with to help develop a little cozy corner at home. She used the same little timer that we had to wait for adult attention. And then acknowledge her when she's talking about her feelings or taking a deep breath. Those deep breaths are working. You calm down so fast. So this mom was great. The princess cards were pretty self-explanatory. They had little visual cues in the classroom. They didn't matter to her. So I printed off all the Disney pictures and said, which one would help us calm down in the cozy corner? Pick the green one. Which one would say I'm having a good day? She ran through the classroom, so we picked Cinderella walking in her beautiful slippers. I walk safely like a princess. I play safely with my friends. The teacher had a magic wand that she used to call your name. We used that for the magic words. Please, thank you. I have to tell you, she never ran in the classroom again. She held out her hands and said, excuse me, please, and she walked like a princess across the class. This is the teacher that thought they might not need this in kindergarten and then said, could I send her another set? And I'll show you some pictures from her transition book. David had a positive behavior support plan. He had some really challenging behavior, got, you know, very upset when kids were in his space. We put a really good plan together for him. We identified that he needed to recognize when he's frustrated, verbalize his behavior, and the kindergarten teacher with this in hand will know exactly what to do to support David as he moves into her kindergarten class. These are the prevention strategies we had in place. We incorporated those into a book, showing him using all of those. The nice thing about a picture book or scripted storybook for a teacher is they actually see the child calm using strategies, and it gives them a ray of hope. oh my gosh, they really can do this. They can line up. They can play with their friends. They can clean up after they're done. So it really helped. We identified on his transition plan what he finds enjoying and motivating. He lived with a single dad, a great single dad. He was really into puzzles. If you turned anything into a fish analogy, he would do it. So just use fishing for him, anything with a fish on it. He persisted far more than anything else. He loved the brown bear and the raccoon, loved helping out, loved helping out. If you see him getting upset, just say, hey, David, I need a little help over here, and you nip it in the bud and it's gone. It's gone. You develop a relationship with him and you've engaged him in something rewarding. From his strengths were he's observant. He loves to work with his hands. He's a multisensory learner. He's got great relationships with people. It's not going to be immediate, but he can develop relationships with you. He can use his calm down strategies. He's just a very sweet, loving child who's going to need a little extra help. I always frame my things he needs to work on as positively as I can. He can use his calm down strategies consistently to handle frustration. He can work to be a super friend. We gave him, the school, his personalized book. Dad had one at home as well. There were specific strategies for his language processing and word retrieval. He was going to need significant support for pre-academics. He was great if he knew you were going to acknowledge and give him feedback when he did something right. So this is the dad that's a great dad, right? And he actually did airbrush T-shirts for the Broncos and for the Nuggets, the Denver teams. They were gorgeous. He made the most beautiful airbrush tiger as a gift to the school for helping him. And I said, the elementary school is going to be so excited to get you, because just think PTA, fundraisers. And he goes, well, I don't like to brag. And I thought, well, then can I brag for you? He goes, well, what do you mean? I said, can't we just write it in the transition plan? And then they'll just say, well, could we see a sample? And he goes, yeah, I guess that would be okay. But when we did this meeting, this is a dad who, based on the behavior plan, practiced 2 behavior strategies every night at home with his son. One was putting a bubble around him for personal space, and the other was putting on the brakes. And that was a strategy from the mental health person on taking a deep breath, calming down, and then thinking about what to do next. For this meeting, Dad had never missed a meeting, and he was late getting there, and I was a little worried, only to find out that Dad comes in stressed. And he said, I am so sorry I'm late, but I have to thank you all because David's behavior plan today saved my job. And we're like, what? He's worked for Home Depot, and he had a pallet of 25 gallons of paints, and it got away from him in the parking lot and was careening through the parking lot. And had it crashed, it would have been a hazmat, and he was afraid he would have lost his job. So he said, I freaked, I froze. And then I remembered putting on the brakes. I took 3 deep breaths, and I ran like hell. And I got there just in time. So he said, practicing with my son to calm down and think about my options saved my job today. This dad called us in January. He called the assistant director of at the center, who was the person he had the best relationship with, to say that his son had been selected for the citizenship year for the first semester of the school year. And he was so proud, and he felt that it was because they knew how to support his son based on the plans that he was able to give them. So it was a very successful strategy. These are just some of the sample pictures that I have used in some of the books. So here we have, I go to school, this is what it looks like. I like going to Mr. Adams' classroom. These are my teachers, they help me. When I go to my new class, this is what it's going to look like. So we have pictures back and forth between the two. At Head Start, our rules were we keep ourselves safe, we keep our friends safe, we keep our things safe. When I'm in Head Start and Ohana, I can be a super friend, I can share my toys. This is what it looks like for me to be acknowledged and rewarded. When I go to Gus, this is my little princess girl. I need to follow the tiger traits. That's their positive behavior support plan. And we started working on that in kindergarten, so she knew what those or in preschool, knew what those expectations were. In kindergarten, I'll have to work to have a good day and a great day. So we had one that we made for her for the last couple months of preschool so that it would prepare her to transition into that program when she went to kindergarten. If kids have a great day, they can move their clip up to the superstar. In kindergarten, we'll eat breakfast in the classroom, but we eat our lunch in the cafeteria. So I got pictures of kids so that she would see that we're going to be eating in two different places. I can fill my bucket and my friend's bucket when I'm kind and solve problems. I know I can do this in kindergarten too. So it's really kind of a positive affirmation book. When I have kiddos with more significant needs, then I really want to make sure that the staff that are receiving them, regardless of the grade level, really have an understanding, because these kids are not going to be able to verbalize and tell you what they need. So my short story on that is I had a little girl who was in a program for medically fragile kids and was moving into our public school. And mom was very nervous about the switch. She was in a program where she had nurses on staff and multiple therapists working throughout the day. And we're going to bring her into a program with up to 16 kids. And mom was ready to just refuse services and keep her home for a year because she had aged out of this medical program. So I said, would it be possible for me in the spring, before she is finishing the program, to just go spend some time and visit? And she said, well, why would you do that? I said, well, if I can see what her program looks like, talk to the staff, see what she likes, what she's successful with. You know, she had spina bifida, major medical problems, oxygen. She wasn't able to tell me. And she goes, well, I guess that would be okay. So what I found out, you know, I went in there kind of with a tell me about her. I interviewed mom. I went in. I found out as much information as I could from mom. I wanted to make sure that I could share these tools with the new school coming in. So what I found out in visiting her, I found out lots of different things. I found out that she's very comfortable with familiar adults, but it takes a while to warm up to new people. She does well with a predictable routine, that she likes to be in her stander. She likes music and VTech toys. She likes a calm environment, and she gets a little upset when it's very loud and noisy, which public school classrooms can be. She's G-tube fed, so she doesn't really eat food, but she likes to taste different things. She likes certain smells. That was important for me to know. So if they're doing cooking activities or finger painting, we can pull in the scents and the smells that she likes. Loves attention from her mom. She can pick a toy with visual picture cues. She likes quiet music. She likes to activate her toys and can be quite persistent if it's something that she likes. She loves to look at pictures and books. She likes soft textures. She'll work for the music toys she likes. She likes bright colors. Found out she likes the color green. It's her favorite. That she sleeps with a little glowworm when she's on her oxygen. That the monkey VTech toy that I had in the trunk of my car, and every time I turned the corner, would activate for quite a while till I got it out. And the flower toys are her favorites. And that we could use little line drawing picture cues, and she could choose songs like Wheels on the Bus and the ABC song as a choice activity. That she understood those signs, which picture line drawings, which was great from a communication angle. We knew she didn't like loud noises, overstimulating. And what she did when things got very intense is she would cover her face. And that was her sign of, give me some peace, give me some quiet, where's that glowworm, turn the lights down, just give me a little time away from folks. Got very agitated at the fire drills. I was able to do a whole map for the teacher getting her on her strengths and her identified needs across all of the different domains of her learning. And then it was time to do her IEP. So we come in for the IEP, and I had never met mom before. I'd met her daughter several times, but I hadn't met mom. And I knew that she was going to be a little leery trusting new people. I was the coordinator, so I was the one there to smooth it all out. So I walk in, and she handed her little girl to me and said, I hear that she really, really likes you. The staff said you were just as sweet as can be, and that my daughter really likes you, so maybe you could hold her during the meeting. And I thought, bingo, those pre-meetings that we had, my interest in her and in working with her staff actually has already begun to develop a relationship for mom. And from that point on, we could map out the IEP goals in a matrix. We could identify the supports and strategies for school because we had made it over the first barrel, and mom was going to give us a chance, and she was going to give us a chance to develop that relationship with her. So I mapped out the different routines of the day. She wasn't able to verbalize, but we could figure out receptively and expressively how she communicated things and map this all out for the teacher so that she did not have to start from scratch, and all of the data that had been collected on how she communicates could be implemented in the program from the very first day that she came in. We identified who was going to do what between the general ed and the special ed team, and we walked out of there with a plan for her to be successful. So let me check my time. Okie doke. So looking at tips as we go from level to level for kiddos. Set up a meeting and visit the school. If the family can go over there, a lot of our programs have lunch over the summer. Let the child go and eat lunch in the school they're going to be going to. Play in the playground, walk around the track outside. The more familiar they are with walking on and off the school property, they're going to be that much less anxious when they go in the fall. Make sure that school knows their strengths, their concerns, and their interests. Encourage the family to communicate with the teachers. It might be rough in the beginning, but if the teacher knows what to do, they can acclimate a lot more successfully. Parents, check the backpack. Make sure that you're getting all the communication coming home. Find out what the routines are and practice them at home so that you can actually support their transition. You know, moving into middle school, as Charmaine said, is a really tough thing for all families. Usually you go from having one teacher to having 5 teachers. And I keep thinking of kiddos on the autism spectrum or with mild cognitive intellectual delays. And I now have to think of 5 different classrooms, and each teacher does things differently. Am I allowed to get up and walk around? Am I allowed to get a drink of water? How do I use the restroom? Do they have a pass? Where's the pass located? Am I allowed to talk in that class? Are we sitting at desks? Are we sitting at tables? It's almost like going into 5 different teaching environments. So if I'm sending a kiddo into middle school, I'm going to want teacher 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I'm going to want 3 or 4 bullets. What does it take for me to be successful in Charmaine's class versus Kiki's class versus Mr. Green's versus Miss Blue's, so that the child has a 1-page map and the family has that 1-page map of kind of the nuts and bolts of the social studies teacher, the math teacher. The environment's going to be larger. It's going to be more compartmentalized, more competitive, more demanding. So I want to get in there so that the child can walk through. There's going to be expectations for lockers, lunchroom, bathrooms, classrooms, bus. The more I know up front before my child starts, the better I can plan for that. Hallways may be crowded. You may have a child who needs to leave a few minutes before if it takes them a long time to walk, or wait until the halls are a little less crowded to be walking through, or maybe they're fine in class, but they're going to need some support getting from class A to class B. What are the teachers and their expectations? And you're going to have a lot more peer pressure and social cliques. And how can you help your child become an active member of that school community? What about clubs? Identifying certain kiddos. I had a little girl who went into middle school that I actually think we did a fabulous job with. And she had Rett syndrome. And the family was very nervous. They were nervous about me getting her for 5th grade. So imagine how nervous they were with her going to the middle school. So in her IEP review, I did write a transition goal. And the only way the transition goal could really be met is if she had access to the middle school classroom. So her ESY services that summer actually extended the transition that we started in March through the summer so that she could locate the bathroom, locate the lunchroom, be familiar with the people in the office, walk around the perimeter of the building. And that was actually the first scripted story I ever did, were her visits when she was in 5th grade over to the middle school so that the family could see exactly what middle school life would look like for her. And the transition was beautiful in retrospect. It worked out well. Emphasize the positive aspects, choices, friends, activities. How do you break tasks into small parts? How do you take the homework apart? What can they participate in the school itself, but also in the school community with peers their age? Who do you contact if there's a problem? Is it the counselor, the school psychologist, the teachers? The peer group is a really big one. And if you have a fifth grader going into middle school and they cluster them, group A, group B, group C, they often do that in a larger school so that you have 3 small middle school units within a school. And that's what they were doing when I transitioned this little gal. So I said, if we could have her in the same cluster with 4 or 5 kids that she already knows. So the teacher said, well, I'll just write a list. And I said, maybe we could do it a little different, and maybe she could pick out the kids that she'd like to be part of her peer group. They all looked at me like, Kiki, she doesn't talk. I said, it's okay, we can do this. So I put an index card on the edge of every child in her 5th grade homeroom class. She had a great grandmother type Hispanic teacher. She was a bilingual child. She was very comfortable there. And she moved around the classroom quite a bit. She had her desk, but she liked to walk around. So she would walk next to the kids that she was most comfortable with, and she would tap her fingers on their desk. And the kids would then go get a chair for her, and she'd kind of sit with them. So the kids for 2 weeks took data. And every time this little gal came over and hung out next to your desk, you made a little mark. So I asked the teachers to generate a list of 4 kids who would be good peer helpers for her in middle school. And then I let the class do data collection for me. And the 4 kids that she chose to stand next to the most were the same 4 kids that the staff picked. But she picked her favorite people in the class that she liked to stand next to. And they made sure that those 4 were in the same cluster with this little girl, so she would have daily contact with the kids that she was already the most comfortable with. So I thought that was a great way to go about it.
Oh, that's so cool.
The key is that relationships are important. Support the family to meet that new team in a relaxed manner. An IEP meeting may not be the most relaxed meeting to meet them. Focus on their strengths and their interests. You know your children and what makes them click. Parents know so much if we would just listen. Between the school they're in and the family, we can help that child be successful with a new team. Provide information on what strategies work in different routines and times throughout the day. Share the best way to communicate, what has worked, what has not worked with your new families. If we know a strategy hasn't worked for 4 years and these 3 work, could we stick with the ones that we already know are time proven and effective? Share the behavior plan, key words to use, calm down strategies to words that we know work. Share the inclusion plan, those key communication phrases, gestures, signs, provide samples like I did for my little gal with receptive and expressive language of how she responds. I firmly believe that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Create a photo book or a scripted story showing the child engaged, participating, and happy. Bridge the transition by using we used to, now we. We used to play here. Now we're going to sit at a desk. We used to have gym in this room. Now we're going to go up to the high school. Visit the new building as often as possible, as I said, so that the child is comfortable. Have photos with the new staff. These are some of the resources. I love the Pacer Center. I always get information from them. This school district, where I had done quite a bit of research, actually has all of the transition plans going from level to level for their kids. So there's a lot out there, as well as Charmaine's transition tips. And again, I just have to end by saying you're someone with great potential. You have the ability to make every day special, and each new morning comes to us gift wrapped, and fresh out of the box are moments we've never experienced before, and chances we've never taken. What a truly magnificent gift. Those with the same old outlook just let the chances slip away. But those who understand the value of a gift, well, they have a chance to turn the present into a really extraordinary day. My personal hero's birthday was this week, and it's Mr. Rogers. Yes. If you could only sense how important you are to the lives of those you meet. There's something of yourself that you leave at every meeting with another person. More and more I've come to understand that listening is one of the most important things we can do for one another. It can be our greatest gift. And see if I can come out of here, Charmaine, and be on screen.
Thank you so much, Kiki. It's just like so many nuggets. I'm like so excited. And I wanted to tell our viewers, if you're watching us live or watching the replay, one of the benefits I give to members in our private group, Parent Advocate Trailblazers, is I give them a transcript of our videos. I just started doing this, and this like really is helpful. I go through and highlight the key points that the presenter made. So if you're interested in our membership group, you can go to the top of my Facebook page and click on that image and find out more information. I know some of you have been writing in the word book to get our free ebook. Hopefully my IEP bot is working and gives you this automatic message about how to get the link. If my IEP bot is taking a lunch break, I'll make sure I come back in and give you the link. But we do have time now for some questions. And I wanted to go back because we've had some great questions and comments. And so, Kiki, when you were when you were talking about at the beginning, about following directions. And so one of our viewers had said, can you elaborate on following directions for a parent who values self-determination and is not a fan of most all short-term behavior management strategies?
When I look at it from the angle of a kindergarten class and coming from a preschool setting, I do believe there's a difference. And I think that you're going to have a range of teachers. And you're going to have teachers who frame their classroom under, let's do this and how do we do it, and really do it from a student-led decision making. But the reality is, at some point in time, it's time to line up, it's time to put things away. And our kiddos who don't really respond well to now are going to have a little bit greater challenge. So I'm also one who's a much more flexible, and how can we do this and make it work? But with my son, who, believe me, he was somewhat oppositional, I would have to say, honey, this is one of the rare times I got to draw a line, and we got to come up with a win-win on this. And this teacher says this, how can we do that? I can negotiate much more as a parent, but in the classroom, if the teacher says, you need to put the book away and do that now, unfortunately, if that's the expectation in that room, he's maybe just going to have to figure out, okay, in these 3 classes, I got some wiggle room, and in this one, I don't. And how can I do that in such a way that my voice is heard, but I'm not coming off as being disrespectful and defiant?
Right.
Again, I look for the teachers who would have that kind of a community culture in their classroom. My kiddos would not have done well with a very kind of autonomous, I'm in charge, authoritarian teacher.
Right.
I visited before I moved them up.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think, I often will say that I hate that C word, compliance, and I prefer the C word, cooperation.
Yes.
And so I think what you're saying is teaching our kids how to negotiate and how to pick up on those social cues when, like, no, the teacher's really serious, I need to follow this, or those kinds of nuances can be hard for some kids to pick up on, but we can, I think, help support them and, through social stories and other things, realize, Mrs. Johnson, when she says this, so.
And it may mean to negotiate adult-wise to before Mrs. Johnson says now, that she could go over with a tap on the shoulder and say, I'm almost ready to tell them now, to just give that little pre-warning. It's not undermining what she does for the class, but it is one way to help that child increase the likelihood that they're able to do it.
Right. Yes, exactly. And we've had quite a few different people on. It's so exciting. I always love it when we have a great variety of viewers from different states, and they're just loving your ideas. And I know we'll have probably thousands of people that watch the replay. So if you have friends that missed our live show, make sure they know that they can come back here and watch the replay. And we also had a comment that she really appreciates the shift from using things and activities that a child enjoys, of finding interesting as rewards, to using them to shape tasks to be more motivating. So I think the phrasing of that was wrong. But I think her point is that she really appreciated when you were talking about, instead of just looking at what kids are interested in as a reward, that we can use what they're interested in to shape the task to be more motivating. And I think of like your princess cards. We're just not going to say if you do your math, you get time with your princess doll. It's like, no, we use your princess interests and we help you learn how to walk through the class as a princess.
And it's not because I'm big on princesses. It's because it's the only thing I could use.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. And I think that is a nice shift, that it's important to know what our kids are interested in, but not just that we can use that as a reward, but we can use that to teach new, strategies, new behaviors. So, yeah, I love that shift that you have in finding out what kids' interests are. And I think, that's the thing that you do so well, and that we want other people to do, is to spend time to get to know the child, get to know the parent, because look at that long list of things that you found out about kids by taking some time to be with them and talk with them. And it's like, are you kidding? That made such a huge difference in her feeling comfortable in that new class or that new school. So we also had a comment about high school. She said that I supported in a high school IEP meeting yesterday, and it's very clear that there are such different learning environments. Well, I get that no one should have to change their personality as a teacher to be able to teach all kids, but I'm wondering where the line goes between student responsibility to conform to specific expectations and teachers' responsibility to create authentic connections with their students, and to try to find ways to accommodate and modify to create meaningful access. So that was a comment, not a question, but I think, you were touching on that, Kiki, as far as, the variety of high school teachers. And then, as a parent, when you're advocating for your child, how much can you expect the teacher to be flexible versus, I find with so many middle school and high school teachers, it's like, this is the student's responsibility. They have to ask for accommodations. They have to do this. And I find high school teachers like starting to, I don't know, I don't even want to say wean themselves, because, but it's like for some kids, that's why they have a 504 plan or an IEP, because they can't do those things. And so how do we help high school teachers know that it's important for them to have some flexibility and not expect all of it to lie with the student?
And, and my son's counselor in high school was instrumental in looking at the classes he had to take and knowing each of those teachers and knowing which ones had a little wiggle room to give him a little bit of a fair chance, and which were going to be so rigid that it was a setup for failure, and actually created and developed his schedule proactively like that. And it made a huge difference. Huge difference. Because there's going to be one math or social studies or language arts teacher who is a little bit more open than others. And then to say, let's step by step, here's where they are, here's where you want them, just like you do a path or a maps. What are the steps to get them up here? Here's where they are now, and do it in small steps.
Right.
Because you want them to be independent.
Yeah, and I think as parents, sometimes you've got to identify those allies in the school. Like you were saying, the high school counselor was an ally, and one of their big responsibilities is scheduling every kid in the high school. So developing a relationship with that high school counselor can be huge. When you're in elementary school, they have different policies, different schools. Some are more lenient about parents choosing who the fifth grade teacher is going to be, but find out what that policy is. See if you can, develop an ally with the principal or somebody, who's helping make those staffing decisions about who goes onto what class list. Sometimes in elementary schools, the teachers are the ones that kind of divide the kids up. So talk to the teacher and say, my child, you know the personality, you know the personalities of the teachers. Who do you think is going to be a good match? So try to be proactive with that in the spring, so it will be smoother than come fall.
And I figured, I was a single parent with three who could be challenging kiddos. And I figured there's a win-win here. If you are bending over backwards to accommodate my kiddo, then what can I do to support you? So I did do the best that I could of volunteering, helping out, sending things in, resources for the classroom, so that it was just a win-win way to approach it.
Oh, yeah, I think so for sure. And so let me see, we have another comment here. And Laura's asking, how can I assure that my 8-year-old is receiving modifications of the material that parallel what the other second graders are doing? She has a para education assistant, and I'm wondering if there's a collaboration with the significant need teacher and the EA and the second grade teacher. And she's joining us from Colorado.
I would ask. I mean, I would just say, is there a time that we could just go for 15 minutes so that you could show me the accommodations you're doing so that I can be using those at home as well? When I
Right,
get books out of the library, what strategies are you using that I can apply at home? And sometimes
right.
coming from the help me understand, I want to do this as well. You're going from the assumption of assuming that they're doing it, and then you want to do it as well, and it puts them in a position of sharing with you.
Right. And I think you had mentioned earlier too about having those pre-meetings. So a lot of times paras don't get invited to IEP meetings because the paras are almost subbing for the teacher. But so if you can have a pre-meeting where you can have the first grade teacher, the second grade teacher, the para, the special ed teacher, and as a parent, sit down and have those conversations ahead of time and make sure that we all understand and we're kind of all on the same page.
I would say ahead of time, and I would go for after as well. And that could be a future
Mm,
webinar. Because one of the things that I did with families, and when I was a coordinator in the school district, is I would then take that IEP, which may be complex based on the needs of the child, and then I would map it out. What does that look
mm.
like on the routines of the day? What is the typical kiddo doing? How are you putting accommodations in place, addressing the IEP goal, putting the behavior strategies in? If they have physical needs, at what point are we doing the standing chair, the on the floor, etc.? And I would map that out so that if a mother went in at 10:15, these are the ones that she should see at that point in time. And that was it was a good process for teachers and families, and it really mapped out the implementation of the IEP. And once you did it for one grade, when they moved up to the next grade, it was a matter of tweaking it. So the first time was a little bit more challenging, but after that, you had an implementation plan in place of how is that IEP actually being implemented.
Yeah, and I think we'll just keep you on contract and keep you coming back because I love that because we talk about the important, from an advocate standpoint, we talk about the IEP and what's written in there. That's what the school's going to be accountable for. Make sure it's in writing, all of these kind of typical things. But the reality is when you leave with that well-written IEP, how does that turn into reality? And as a parent, even with the statement of service delivery, that does not give you a clear picture.
Yes.
So I
No.
love, looking at a framework, like you said, to map it out, to say this is the IEP document, and now this is our map of how we're going to implement the IEP. I love, love, love. So we'll just have to schedule more time for you.
So can I end with my mom's quote that she sent me?
Yes, yes. Kiki had yes, tell us about your
Okay, so real
recent.
brief, I had a little girl who's living with grandma. She has full custody, significant developmental delays. I met her when she was 20 months old. She was at an 8 to 9 month level. I've worked with mom for the past 3 years. For Colorado folks, she went to the PEP conference, took a Greyhound bus to Colorado Springs to be there, Parent Advocacy weekend, and her IEP for transition into kindergarten was this Tuesday morning. And I was in Washington advocating for the Save the Children Network for early childhood education. So when I told Carrie that I was not able to be there, she sent me this email, which made me feel that the work that I did, I made it. She said, we will miss you, but as you already know, you're always with us, near or far. This is a mom who didn't know initially that her child had significant delays. She said, do you have any things that I should stress in what we want and need? Like transportation, after school activities, outreach and community supports, goals, transition plan, kindergarten classroom settings, family support, hours of each specialist involvement. Is there anything I'm missing to ask? I really value your input. You will always be my mentor that I confide in and trust. Thank you for always being a support and holding our hands. This is my time to fly. I know I can do it. Just breathe and stretch my wings, open my eyes and take a leap of faith and soar. I'm ready. Have a beautiful day. Safe travels. Talk to you soon. And she advocated for herself to get the very best IEP for her little girl with multiple disabilities coming into kindergarten.
And that is so powerful, Kiki, the way that you can impact families. And I so appreciate the work that you do and the love of the work that you have. And thank you so much again for being with us. I'll also put in the description the link from a previous video that Kiki did with us about positive behavior supports. And let me check here. Susan from Denver says, love the idea of having pre and after IEP meetings. We had all of those meetings from early February to now. They all went quite well.
That's
great.
Yay
for Susan. And she's one of our members in our Parent Advocate Trailblazers group. So and Susan has been doing an awesome job with her child. But again, I'd love to thank you, Kiki. Remind people that if you have friends that didn't catch the live show, they can come back to Visions and Voices Together and see the replay. Next week, we will be finishing up our kind of series on universal design for learning. I'll be talking about the variety of ways that teachers can engage and motivate students. So I'm sure I'll take some strategies just from this week, and we'll repeat those next week. But I am Charmaine Tanner. I am here to help parents advocate for their children so they will be safer, happier, and learning each day in school beside their friends. So until next Thursday at noon Mountain Time, everyone have an awesome week, and we shall see you next Thursday.
Bye-bye. Thank you.